Happy January, Happy New Year. A new year brings on a new garden, which is always a lot of fun. Now that we're settling back and we're ready to get into spring planting, some things I like to think about growing and planting seeds of now, though it might be just a tad bit early, are peppers and tomatoes. Especially peppers. Peppers take a long time to kind of get going, especially hot peppers. So you think of your reapers, anything that's like gonna just burn your mouths. Those are the type of things you wanna start early. I was gonna pull a couple types of peppers that I love, and I started looking at all the different seed packets that we have, and they're just too many to list. So for seed planting, I would definitely look at peppers, maybe start on your tomatoes. If we are starting to look and our weather is still on the cold side with these, we are gonna be using seed starting trays and heat mats. The concept behind a seed starting tray, one that I like a lot about these, is that it helps keep things organized. So inside these seed starting trays, there's little cells, and you can kind of keep, where your seeds are at. That way, if you go out in the garden and put your seeds, and we get a big rain or birds are eating them, you don't know where they're at. That's what the beauty of these seed starting trays are. Typically they come, when you put them together, they have a dome, and this is like a miniature greenhouse. And so many times people come here at the nursery and they're like, this doesn't snap on. We don't want this to snap on. What we actually want to do, and it's kind of the term for it, is let it burp. So as the heat builds up in these, it actually will float a little bit and it'll let that hot air out, because there's a certain point that these reach where it might be too hot. So we do want these to breathe. And there's also these little vents on the top, so you can open and close them depending on what time of the day it is. You have a little bit of heat spell if we get really cold. All right, so now that you have your seed starting tray and dome set up, now it's time to add a little bit of extra heat. And the way we do that is with a heat mat. These heat mats help keep the temperatures about 10 to 15 degrees above ambient temperature. So that means if we are 50 degrees, it'll keep it around 60, 65 degrees. So if we do have a heat spell, sometimes you have to unplug them. Sometimes you have to plug them in, have them at night. It's up to you to kind of figure out when's the best time to adjust these. They do not come with a thermostat. They are waterproof and they should last many, many years. That's the beauty with these types of things. It's just another tool to add in your toolbox. So also coming up in January, as we start planting our seeds or they're starting to germinate, we try to figure out when to fertilize. So typically, when you plant a seed, it has enough energy to start growing. All the seeds need to germinate is heat and moisture. That's why we're using these setups. But when they get that second set of leaves, the true leaves that come out, that's when we start looking at fertilizing. We try to fertilize with something with a little lower numbers. So I like to use the down-to-earth starter fertilizer. It's a 3-3-3. It's an all-purpose, the numbers are low. What's really cool with this, it does have some good beneficial bacteria into it. It's gonna help feed those root systems. A little of this goes a long way. As we start stepping things up and our plants get a little bit bigger, we start switching over to more of a vegetable fertilizer. We do these monthly. We get a lot of rain and things are washing out really fast. Sometimes you want to set these up every 3 weeks. It's up to see what your soils are like, what the weather's doing. That'll tell you how often to fertilize. So also coming up in January, for all the beekeepers out there, sometimes what we have to look at is making sure our hives are staying warm. Luckily here in San Diego, we don't get snow, so we don't really need to winterize our hives. But something we want to look at is that entrance. So that entrance is where those bees are able to fly into. So they land, they walk in, they walk out. That's that entrance. When we have a big wide entrance, that's allowing a lot of cold air in. So sometimes what we have to do is, as it gets colder, is put an entrance reducer in. What's cool with these is that there's a couple different sizes of entrance reducers. There's a medium and a small size. So depending on how cold it is, maybe you're up in a higher elevation, we're gonna go down to the really small size. If we're down here, coastal or just in San Diego, we might end up in the medium size. These should not be nailed in, they just slide in. So that way when we warm up, you can slide them right out. And last but not least for January, let's talk about carnivorous plants. A lot of times people get carnivorous plants and now they know, hey, you know what? I have to use reverse osmosis or distilled water. Things were going great. Now it's getting cold and our plants are looking like they're starting to die. So if you do have like a Venus flytrap, expect these to go into dormancy. So if you're getting in a cold time of year, less light, cooler conditions, these little snappers will start to die off. That little root ball in there will come back in the springtime. As these do go into dormancy, these leaves, the little snappers, will die off, but that root ball is what will come back in the springtime as we warm up. So yes, they might look like they're dying, but they're not, and they will come back in springtime. So for January, we'd love to hear what you guys are up to, share stories, let us know any thoughts or ideas you might be having. So personally for myself in January, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be getting all the seeds that I've purchased. I'm gonna be looking at the days to germination and start looking at when I should planting those. A lot of times we're not planting all those different varieties of seeds all at once. We might need to stagger them a little bit. So a nice kind of tip I like is when you get a packet of seeds, sometimes you open it up and there's like 50 seeds in there. Maybe start planting 10 seeds, wait a couple weeks, plant another 10 seeds, wait a couple weeks, plant another 10 seeds. It's called succession. So that way, as things mature and your plants are getting this big, you already have another new set coming on. But this is also gonna help when we start harvesting. Everything's not gonna be ready at once. You're gonna have some that you're gonna be able to harvest. You'll have some stuff that's gonna be coming on. So that's what I'll be doing in January, and I hope you guys have a great month.